Good morning. If you're watching this video, you probably answered yes to wanting to see how I build an AI voice agent. I'm going to show you step by step how I build them and why I build them the way I do. But I want to start with some basic foundational information before I begin the build. First, when I build a human sounding AI voice agent, it's called conversational agent. And the reason I build a conversational agent is because nobody wants to sound like they're talking to a robot. Will AI make mistakes? Absolutely. Is it perfect? No. Think about it. AI voice agents did not exist 2 years ago, right? Not in the form we have today. Robocallers did, but they were pre recorded messages with very little interaction. They could handle yes and no's. These are conversational AI agents. So, what I do when I build an agent is I take my 40 years of marketing experience and I make sure that these agents not only interact to do the job that they're intended to do, but they sound conversational along the way because it makes the consumer experience, the person interacting with the AI agent, have a far better experience. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about platforms and then I'll go into the build. I have built AI agents on every platform there is now. I can tell you from my experience, the top performing platforms are Vappy, Retail, 11 Labs is really good. They all have benefits and they all have drawbacks. But I will say for the money, for the value, for the ability to make connections, Vappy hands down is the single best platform, in my opinion, today, as of February 5th, when I recorded this. That could change tomorrow. The reason and I'm not crapping on GHL. The reason I don't like GHL agents is no matter what you do, they don't sound human. They sound very robotic. And I don't know what their back end is. They incorporate lots of tools into their platform. So this is not a hate on GHL. I love them. I'm friends with one of the founders of the company. And we've been having some conversations about it. I shared with him the output of one of my agents from Vappy just so he could hear the difference. So that said, this isn't about the platform you choose. This is about how to build an agent that interacts and engages in a very human-like fashion. So without further ado, I'm going to get into it, and I have to move some things around on my screen. So first, let's talk about the core components of an AI voice agent. The core components, and yes, I'm going to read my screen because I put it on here so that you guys would have it. It's identity and role definition, conversation management, which includes pattern recognition and voice characteristics. Remember, I'm making conversational AI agents. The interaction flow structure. This is something that most people don't even think about, is the flow structure of the conversation, right? The opening sequence, what happens when the call starts, and then the core transaction flow of the conversation. What is the end result we're trying to get the AI agent to produce? Is it book a call? Is it schedule an appointment for a service provider at the house? Whatever that is part of the flow. Business logic integration. Those are operating parameters and system functions. Those are all business related. Data collection frameworks. These are required fields and validation rules, meaning if we ask a consumer making a call for their first name, their phone number, their address, whatever it is, behind the scenes, we want some rules that validate that information was properly received. Because without that, it could continue the call, and we have no way of knowing if it actually captured the data. Customer experience elements, personalization, and support protocols, very important. Technical integration points, these are the back-end systems and the process automations that make things work. And again, that's where GHL has a unique advantage, where if they're using that platform or if you're using that platform, everything's in one place. So you're not making a lot of outward API connections to different platforms. Then there's the quality assurance framework. This is progress tracking within the conversation and compliance elements of making sure it stays compliant to the conversation that you've developed in the framework. And then implementation requirements. These are the technical setup and training requirements for the knowledge, some of it. And then success metrics. And these are performance indicators and monitoring of how the call went. So let's go a little bit deeper. So that is the overview And then I'm going to show you a real world example, by the way. So I asked the client if I could use their AI as an example. And so what I did is I duplicated their AI into one of my accounts outside of their account. So they're not going to get a bill for this. And we're also not going to be connected to their CRM booking appointments because that would be dumb. So here are the core components with a breakdown. Let me open this up. Okay. So I'm going to go slowly on this. Under the role and identity, here, I'll just bring this up the screen. Under the role and identity, we have the assistant name and version number of the prompt. I keep very strict version numbers. Every time we make a change, the version number goes up by 1. When it's a major change, it goes up a whole number. And you'll see that later on when you see the AI agent we have named Fallon. The clear role specification, what their role is, the company and brand information, the service territory and limitations. For example, the AI prompt I'm going to show you is they service Los Angeles and Orange County. There are limitations. If it's in San Diego County or if it's outside of those counties, they're not going to service them. The core expertise areas, what do they know? What is their core business? So that the AI agent knows what the business is and what they do, and then the primary responsibilities of that AI agent or assistant or whatever you call it. So everybody has a different name for them. Now let's go to conversation management, which to me is the most important part. Pattern recognition. I want response triggers. Those are triggers that when a person says something, the AI responds to it in a human-like fashion. And you'll see this play out when I walk through the paces with Fallon. Common phrases and keywords. So a lot of my agents, no, in fact, all of the agents we create have simple things like, yep, oh, I see. Sure, let me check on that. Things that we as humans say. It peppers those in the right places because I've built protocols for those things. User intent classification, not as critical for this. We can get into that later. Contextual understanding, very important. And it needs to understand the context of the conversation and what the person is asking for. And so, for example, if it's a remediation company for mold remediation and someone says they found mold in their bedroom, contextually, it's not going to say, oh, do you have a mold problem? It says, oh, the person says they have mold in their bedroom. This must be a mold issue. I understand the context of this. I'm not going to ask them if they have a mold issue. So things like that. And then error recovery patterns. These are when the AI goes off the rails or doesn't understand something, how to recover from that in a way that doesn't sound stupid. Oftentimes, we build in system functions to mitigate delays in the system. These are not really under error recovery, but I'll explain what that is. So if we're doing an active call function where it's calling a tool, get calendar appointment or book calendar appointment, something like that, there's a lag when it's talking to the CRM, right? That API call goes out, and depending on traffic and depending on how many hops it makes, there's sometimes a lag. So we build in specific things like, oh, give me a moment while I check my calendar and see what's available for you, okay? In just that amount of time, there's enough cover for the AI agent to pull up that information. Again, if it's going to another platform to get that information, your CRM. So, voice characteristics, pace control, tone modulation, natural pauses, background elements. I don't use background elements anymore. Initially, I started using, the background keyboard sound or something, office noises. I don't like it. It sounds super fake. It sounds like a call center in some foreign country. And so it's not a good user experience. And then speaking style guidelines. How does this CSR communicate? Are they casual? Is the company kind of hip and trendy? Right? So we want to make sure that the guidelines of the agent match the business brand. Otherwise, there's going to be a disconnect for their customers. Now, let's talk about interaction flow structure. There's an opening sequence, the initial greeting, the problem discovery, identity verification, and service qualification. Identity verification, service qualification are customer information. And then are they in the service area for the business? Let's say if it's a service based business. The core transaction flow, information gathering, service scheduling, data verification. Again, we like to do verifications, confirmation process, and closing sequence. These are all critical stages of a voice agent. Then business logic integration. By the way, I'm going to give you guys all of this. So I'll share these documents or this document down below or somewhere in this thing. You'll see it. I'll put it as PDFs, as attachments. Business logic integration. Now, these are the business focused knowledge for the AI. Operating parameters are business hours, service limitations, rules for scheduling, right? If you have an appointment at 8 a.m. and there's only one person to do the appointment, you can't book a second appointment at 8 a.m. But if you have 5 people, you can book up to 5 appointments at 8 a.m. Priority handling. Is this an emergency situation? Is the person's house flooding? Is there an electrical emergency where things are sparking, right? And again, I'm using service-based business because the example I'm going to show you is a service-based business. And then exceptions to those parameters. Now, system functions. Appointment management, again, data validation, schedule checking, booking confirmation, and status updates. All internal business stuff. Now let's go to the data collection framework. What do we need in data collection? Customer information, service details. So customer information is obvious. Service details, what's being serviced. Location data, where does the customer live? Do they prefer text, email, whatever? And any special requirements. Do they have a dog that needs to be put away before you get there? Again, validation rules. We always like to validate data. And then customer experience elements. Personalization. I, again, spend a lot of time on this area to make sure that the user experience is profoundly different from other AIs. We set rules and structures in place for how the AI speaks to the customer. If the company is very formal, it'll be Mr. Jones, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Smith, Smith, Mrs. Johnson. But if the company is very comfortable with their clients or wants their clients to have a personal feel, we'll use first name. Again, the company makes that decision, not me. History recognition. If we're connected to a CRM, it will pull previous data. So if someone's calling about an air conditioning unit that's not working and they're a previous customer, the AI will reach into their CRM and say, hey, are we talking about the unit on the west side of your house or on the east side of your house? Oh, it's on the east side. Okay, that unit was just serviced last year. Got it. So we pulled that history into the conversation. And then contextual preference management and contextual responses. Those are all individual to how that AI interacts for that business. Support protocols are quite important. If the person says, I want to talk to a human, how do you handle that escalation? If there's an emergency, how do you handle that escalation? How do you hand off to a human? Does the AI call another number? Is it able to transfer it? There are a lot of things that you can handle internally. Flip those two together. And then there's emergency handling and follow-up procedures. And then the technical integration points. This is all back-end and wiring, right? How is it connected to scheduling system, customer database, service management? Those are all pretty self-explanatory. And then finally, almost finally, 2 more. Quality assurance framework. This makes sure that during the conversation, interaction milestones are met so that we're gathering data, we're doing the things, and the AI is completing these checklists completely silently in the background while the conversation's happening. But this is critical to having a really good outcome and a good conversation for the customer. Implementation requirements, technical setup, voice processing, natural language understanding, dialogue management, integration points, error handling. Okay, so basically you're getting a sense of how I build these things. And by the way, this is not, there. When I say this, there's nobody in this space that's an expert. I have just spent a lot of time. We've built literally hundreds of agents now. And so I've spent a lot of time learning how to adapt a human conversation to the AI so that the interaction feels so much better than what you would get from an off the shelf. Here's your role. Here's your thing. Here's that. Do that. Those AIs do the job, but man, they don't sound human. They don't sound conversational. And we're not trying to hide the fact that they're AI. We just want the user experience to be better so that they have a higher success rate on the call. And then performance indicators. This is how we, after the call, we have some integrations that we rate the call, we look for key metrics in was the goal of the AI agent met during the call? Did they book the appointment? How happy was the customer? How accurate were the responses that we captured? How was the handling time? What's the rate of mistakes? All of those things. So this is what goes into an AI agent. Now, I'm going to jump over to VAPI. I'm going to be very clear here. We had permission from our client, Professional Foundation Repair. Shout out to Darren, who is awesome. And we copied this AI agent over into one of our VAPI accounts. So when we build, we'll build it in this account and then we'll connect to the client accounts. And we can do it in any platform, but this is where we have it done. Now, I did not check the temperature. I believe we have her temperature set a little bit differently. I think we have our temperature down at about 0.4. So for temperature it changes the variability of the outcome. And so it'll go off the rails or off the script a little bit. And if you want to keep it tighter, you lower that variability, you lower that temperature. If you want it to be totally wacky and weird, go higher. So that's why we do what we do. I'm not going to go through the core stuff of VAPI. Really, what I'm going to focus on is the prompt itself for the AI. So I'm going to roll up on the screen here. And I want you to understand that, in fact, let me go just me on camera. I want you to understand that for this demonstration, we've disconnected all the tools. We told the AI ahead of time to act as if those tools are still connected. So as I demo this, it may error because it's not connected to the tools. If it does, I'll let you know that was an error and doesn't happen in normal calls. Again, I'm not using a live system because I don't want to logjam the client's server. I don't want to create appointments. And I want to do a lot of pushing and testing of this AI so that you guys can see just the fluidity of it. Okay, so maybe before I go through the system prompt fully, how about I do a quick call so that you guys get a sense of the conversation that I would have with this AI. Here we go.
Thanks for calling Professional Foundation Repair. This is Fallon. Who am I speaking with today?
Hi, Fallon. This is Ken.
Hi, Ken. Thanks for reaching out. I understand you're having some foundation issues. Can you tell me what's happening at your property?
Yeah, there's a crack on my floor that goes from the front door to the side window. And now one of the windows is stuck. In fact, where the crack is, the window won't open.
I totally understand your concern, Ken. Just to help us better understand your situation, is this a raised foundation or a slab foundation?
Oh, I don't know. What's the difference?
No problem, Ken. A raised foundation usually has a crawl space underneath, while a slab foundation is a solid concrete pad that sits directly on the ground. Do you happen to know if there's a crawl space under your house?
No, there's definitely not a crawl space. So it must be a slab.
Thanks for clarifying that, Ken. We can definitely help with this. Let's get one of our certified inspectors out to assess the foundation. While I'm checking our schedule, could you tell me when you first noticed the crack on your floor?
About a week ago, when we started lifting up the carpeting, we're doing a renovation project.
Got it, Ken. Thanks for sharing that. I understand your situation. Looking at our schedule, would 10 a.m. on Friday work for you?
Oh, I'm not going to be back at the house until after 2. Do you have any other available times?
No problem, Ken. Let me take a quick look. How about 2 p.m. on Friday? Would that work for you?
Yeah, 2 p.m. would be great.
Perfect, Ken. I've got you scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. Now let's get a few details to finalize everything. Could you spell out your first and last name for me?
I can, but you know what, Fallon? I just realized I have an appointment Friday. Do you have any openings next Monday early in the morning?
No worries, Ken. Let me check that for you. How does 8 a.m. on Monday sound?
Perfect.
Great, Ken. Let's finalize your details for Monday at 8 a.m. Could you spell out your first and last name for me?
Sure. It's Ken Moskowitz. That's Ken. Last name Moskowitz.
Thank you, Ken. Let me read that back to you just to make sure. Kenmoskowitz. Did I get that right?
You did.
Perfect. What's the property address where you'd like us to conduct the inspection?
1218 East Mark Way, Queen Creek, Arizona, 8514.
I'm so sorry, Ken. While I'd love to help, we only service Los Angeles and Orange counties in California. Unfortunately, your address falls outside our service area. Is there anything else I can assist you with?
Fallon, I'm sorry. I have two homes. I meant to give you my Los Angeles home. I gave you my one in Arizona.
No problem at all, Ken. Let's get the correct address for your Los Angeles home. What's the property address there?
1234 Disneyland Way, Anaheim, California, 90015.
Thank you, Ken. So that's 1234 Disneyland Way, Anaheim, California, 90015. Have I got that right?
Yes, you did.
Great, Ken. Now, could you spell out your email address for me? This is
Sure.
just to send your.
Okay, it's Ken at adzombies.com. That's KEN at ADZOMBIES.com.
Thank you, Ken. Let me read that back to you just to make sure. KEN at ADZOMBIES.com. Did I get that right?
You did.
Perfect. What's the best number to reach you at?
480 867 5309.
Thanks, Ken. So that's 4808675 309. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Great. Almost done, Ken. Is the property in escrow or listed for sale?
No, why do you ask?
We just like to know for our records. Last question. How did you hear about us? Was it Google, Yelp, or perhaps one of our trucks?
I saw your trucks. Great branding, by the way. And then I went online and read your Google reviews.
That's wonderful to hear, Ken. Thank you for sharing that. I'm finalizing those details for you now. Just a moment. Excellent. I've got you scheduled for Monday at 8 a.m. You'll receive both an email confirmation and a text reminder. If there are any issues with your appointment, our head of scheduling will reach out to you. Is there anything else I can assist you with?
No, I think that's it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Ken. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Goodbye, Ken.
And that is how a really well trained and well developed AI should sound. Now, let me show you why the conversation went the way it did based on the model I just explained to you in the Google Doc. So, if you notice, and again, there's some system functions in here that are not going to be connected to outbound or outside CRMs and servers and things like that. So, this is version 3.012 of this AI prompt. Okay. We have a date call and a day call so that at the start of the conversation, the system is aligned and knows the date and time. Universally, everything's based on Zulu time, which nobody uses except for pilots. A lot of people use it, but we don't use it, right? We don't know what Zulu time is. But if you are GMT -7, where I live in Arizona is GMT -7, it's Zulu time -7. Nobody can do those calculations. So we get a date, time, everything locked in the system. So we're converting to the local time zone. We then give it system function execution protocols. These are critical system functions that must be utilized. Now, these are simulated for the demo. We never announce the function call to the customer. So meaning when the tool gets the trigger word that actually taps into their CRM, it doesn't say, let me connect with our CRM now and find an appointment slot for you. It doesn't do that. We never use technical terms or system operations in speech. We only use natural conversation transitions, and back-end operations remain silent to or invisible to the consumer or the customer. And again, we're doing a lot of simulation because we're not connected physically to their stuff. We put in the business hours. So the system now knows, based on the date and time, if it's outside of this date and time, we are out of normal business hours. And therefore, the AI agent is going to do things differently. Human request handling. So these are all before we even get to the role. This is when a customer requests to speak to a human or a real person. How do we handle that? And we have a line in there for it to deal with that. If it's outside of business hours, how do we deal with it? If the customer insists on speaking with a person during business hours or outside of business hours, how do we deal with it? Callback information, how do we deal with it? Examples of incorrect and correct communication. Let me execute get appointment schedule is nothing we would ever want the customer to hear. Let me check our schedule is. Now we get to role and identity. You are Fallon, a specialized foundation repair representative for professional foundation repair with 20 years of local experience. Service territory. Now, this should sound familiar because if you look back at that Google Doc, let's go here. We have service territory, right? Right there. So we're getting into the meat of the AI right now. And then if they're out of the area, which you heard me have a conversation with her and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're out of our area." Her core attributes, and she's a her. She's expert yet approachable. She certainly sounded that way. Warm and reassuring professional tone. Solution oriented problem solver. Innovative thinker. Educational and patient approach. Strong local market focus. Voice characteristics. Modern pace with thoughtful pauses. Clear delivery during information confirmation. Natural 1 to 2 second processing pauses. Speed variation based on content importance. And again, office area ambient background we've taken off. So I could actually eliminate that and it wouldn't impact anything. By the way, in VAPI, there's a switch you can turn that on. Some platforms have it native, some platforms you add it, and so all of this can go away because we don't use it anymore. In fact, there, and I'll update that. Now, engagement phrases. Okie dokie, let me look into that for you. I totally understand your concern about specific issue. Alrighty then, based on my experience with Southern California foundations. Just a sec while I verify that for you. Hang tight for a moment. Let's see what we've got available, shall we? Things that normal humans say, your AI should say. And if your AI doesn't say these things, it's going to sound more robotic. Then response protocols. So when someone gives, and this is pattern recognition, when someone responds, yeah, yes, sure, okay, all right, absolutely, of course, yes, right? We have a direct progression of how the AI responds to different things. And you'll see there's direct progression with warm acknowledgement, transition to clarification with empathy, gentle clarifying question, clarification with patience. Sometimes people say maybe, or I'm not sure, or I don't know. We're going to clarify with patience because that person clearly doesn't know the answer to the question that the AI is asking. Now, these are simulated functions that in the real world, the word simulated does not exist. When the person is looking for a specific date, it will call to the CRM through Make. It'll trigger a webhook, talk to the CRM, look at the available appointment times. All of that was faked for this, as I shared with you. These just tell the AI how to trigger those tools in the background while this is happening. So this is simply formatting of date information the way we need it formatted, like it formatted for the specific CRM that they use. Then we have a problem tracking matrix. This is all done behind the scenes. The consumer never hears initiate, initial problem description, foundation type verification. This is just checking through the list to make sure that the AI is gathering all the information necessary. If you heard in my call, it did an initial scheduling check, asked scheduling preferences, verified my name, my address, and then even asked me about how I found the company. Was it Google, Yelp, or perhaps you saw a truck? Then the interaction flow, the opening and problem discovery. Hi, Ken. Thanks for reaching out. I understand you're having some foundation issues. Can you tell me what's happening at your property? So after that initial interaction, it's going to move to this. When the customer describes the issue, we're going to go a little bit deeper to discover if it's a slab or a raised foundation. If we don't know what it is, we're going to help them answer the question. Then problem discovery and scheduling. After they explain the problem, we tell them that, yes, this is something we can deal with. Obviously, if they're calling a foundation company and they're asking for flower beds, we can't help them with that, right? That's not a situation that we can help with, and it'll move the call in that natural direction. Then we have scheduling coordination. So we have a bunch of protocols in here that make sure that the system does everything right. And all operations are always silent and seamless. Now, service overview. That's funny. I was going to, until I got permission from Darren to use professional foundation repair, I was going to just call it foundation fixers. I didn't catch that. So it is actually professional. Whoops, foundation repair. I have to fix it just because I know Darren's going to see this video. Whoops, not foundation repair. There we go. What do they do? Foundation is wells, slab foundation repair, raised foundation, earthquake retrofitting, hydraulic push piers, the whole nine. And then for the simulation stuff, it's going to execute the AI tools pretend-wise. It's going to look for available time slots. Now, these are real, right? So a booking slot at 8, 10, 12, 2, 4, Saturdays 8, 10, and 12. However, those are the slots that the system knows are available. However, it has to check the CRM to verify that those slots are open. But it at least knows, it has the base knowledge of, hey, here are the appointment slots. Now, how we present it, would this time on this day work for you? If they say no, or the customer asks for something else, which I did, it moves on and starts checking and looks at the CRM to make sure it has all this information. Now, the good news is when it calls the CRM the first time, it's got all of the schedule openings already in its short memory. So it's not like it has to go back into the CRM again to get that information. So that's a pretty basic functionality. Now, information gathering. This is critical. I'm going to take a sip of my iced tea here. This is critical when you're getting information that the AI, instead of having the person just say their name, it's better if you have the AI ask them to spell their name up front. Because if I said, but it didn't say spell your name, it would misspell my name all the time. Even simple names. John Smith, it might do Jon or John, and one could be wrong. Smith could be Smyth or Smith, right? It could be Smythe, whatever. But my point is, to avoid that frustration potentially, if you think ahead and go, would you mind spelling out your first and last name for me? I want to get it right. That sounds so much better to the consumer because now I'm spelling my name and I'm not feeling like, oh, you totally messed it up. I've got to now correct you. And then it might not get it right the first time. Now, in this company's instance, critical territory check is required because, again, Los Angeles and Orange County, we do not want to go out of that service area. And so we make sure that is in the service area. So it's mandatory that the system checks that. If they are outside of that service area, Los Angeles or Orange County, as you heard when I tried to give it a fake address in Arizona, it rejected it. Now, email collections. When we do these things, I want to make sure that the domain handling, it's not spelling out Gmail or YAHO, right? Those are pretty common email handles. So if it gets one of those, it's going to not spell it back. It's going to simply say it. In my case, I used one of my company's ad zombies and it spelled it back for me because it's not a common domain. Now, could you spell out your email address? Same thing. It is so difficult for an email to go johndoe@yahoo.com and not know, is it DOE, DOH, right? There's so many potential areas for screw up. So rather than doing that, we just ask the person to spell their name. And then if the customer is reluctant to give their email address, we simply say, hey, we use this solely for your confirmation of appointment, inspection details, et cetera. Would you be willing to share your email then? And then if they say yes, you go to step 2. If they say no, we can continue without that information. The challenge is they're not going to get their appointment confirmation via email, but they will still get it via text message. Now, if they give you an email address, perfect. Let me read that back to you to make sure I have it. It'll spell the name @domain.com. Again, if it's a real domain, not a real domain, if it's a popular domain, it will simply say the domain. If it's a domain like I gave it, AdZombies, it's going to spell out ADZOMBIES.com. It'll confirm that it's right. If it's not right, it'll go back and ask the customer again because it wants to get it right. Phone collection. It'll group the digits naturally. She did just that. Now, these are all confirmations that need to happen. It needs to make sure it has all of this information before it moves on to the next part. That's when it says, so it does this in the background. That's when it says, almost done, last two questions. Is the property in escrow or listed for sale? Right? In this case, it's not. If it is, there's a fee for inspection. If it's not, there's no fee for inspection, assuming that there's going to be some work done there. And then the lead source. By the way, I'm curious, how did you hear about us? Was it Google, Yelp, or perhaps one of our trucks? That lead source is critical to them. So that lead source comes into the information, but again, we're putting it in a way that the customer doesn't feel inconvenienced by answering the question. And then the booking finalization. Now, in this case, we simulate that because we're not connected. Finalizing the details now, just for a moment, it actually throws the webhook out at that point. Make sure that it's finalized everything. I've got you scheduled for this date and time. You'll receive an email and text. Usually that happens, by the way, while the customer is having the conversation. So like by the time before she even says, is there anything else I can assist you with? Oftentimes you'll get the ding on your phone and the email will be in your inbox. And so that's what's happening there. Now we have critical rules. Now you'll notice there's a lot of critical rules and then service overviews. The critical rules are things that the AI has to follow. Pattern match while maintaining natural flow. I want to pattern match the conversation with the customer, complete all the verifications, smooth phase transitions, track all progress steps. All of these things are critical to making sure the API sounds human. Also, wait for API responses. Keep responses focused and friendly. Always store customer selected future appointment date time, never today's date. So these are all things that we build into or bake into. And then finally, this is like the service overview of making sure it knows what the company does, not my client does. That is how you build a robust AI voice agent. And I will share this document with you so that you guys can see. I'm going to share, I'll even share the AI agent doc with you so that you can see how that looks. And then you can just adapt it, retrofit it for your own brand. But these take time. This AI was developed months ago, and then every month we make improvements. We quality score it. We look at interactions. We look at customer satisfaction scores based on other AIs grading the conversation. And so we use transcripts and audio, and then we have other tools that analyze the call, but then we have a success rubric that measures right after the call happens. Was that call a winner? And so we then know how to make improvements each month to make the AI better and smarter and more efficient for the company. So I hope that helps you guys. If you have any questions, simply drop them here. You can always message me. I'm happy to help you. But this is how to build a robust human sounding AI agent. Have an amazing day.